Delays in the workflow may be the most significant choke point in your flow of value delivery. Hi, I'm Joshua Barnes, and welcome to this episode of All Things Value Delivery Management, where the focus is going to be on delays. This is one of our factors for effective value streams, and it's one of the ones that the role of the value delivery manager can use to increase the flow of value being delivered. So the principle this is based on, and there's a difference between principles and practices. So principles are things that are just universally applicable. Few delays in the workflow is one of the things that we want, right? Because when we've got delays, right, the weighting from the value that we're able to deliver to customers, whether they're internal or external, is a real problem. And this is one of the biggest areas that we can make improvements in. So for this episode, I'm going to do things a little bit different than I normally do. I'm going to actually get into Miro, Miro being the virtual collaboration platform that we use most often, both within the work we do at Process Mentors and Success Mentors University, as well as our customers. And I want to be able to take you through a few examples of some of the practices we can use to identify delays and then determine how best we can go about either reducing them or, even better, eliminating them. All right, so let me get into Miro. And I'm going to start off with some of the things that we often hear leadership say, and one of the main drivers for a lot of Agile transformations: it takes too long to get anything done. We need to decrease our time to market. And with moving to an Agile way of working, some of the thought is, well, that's just going to solve a lot of the problems we have with the amount of time it's taking to get value into our production environment, into the hands of our users. So our teams are going to be, some often significant percentage of efficiency increase. We're going to get 4,000% efficiency gains by just moving to an Agile way of working. And unfortunately, that is just not the case. The bigger culprit, the thing that we want to be focusing on, is the waiting time. Again, these delays between our value-adding activities, sometimes called touch time, and then the time in between those activities either getting started and completed or for the next value-adding activity to begin and to start working on. A huge area for improvement. So what are some of the practices? What are some of the ways that we can identify delays? And again, I'm going to tie this into that role of the value delivery manager, right? Somebody who has the capacity and is responsible for attending to our factors for effective value streams and for looking at identifying delays and what we can do about them. So just a few practices, right? So Kanban board movement tracking, holding cues for our waiting states, story tracing, identifying the constraint, dependency boards, and measuring flow efficiency as a metric, something like at the MBI level, from the time a minimum business increment gets pulled into the workflow until the time that we feel it has met the definition of done and it's providing consumable value. So today, I'm going to focus on two of these, and they're both based around the visualization of work. So this is one of the very effective ways that we're able to identify lots of information, but one of the things is how long something is waiting and how long something in our workflow is either moving forward, being handed off for the next thing that needs to be done, or it's going backwards. Right, for whatever reason that might be. Maybe a bug is found, we've missed something, it's work that's going kind of reverse in our workflow, right? And through visualization and a lot of the tools that we have today, again, I'm going to tie it into Miro since I'm using Miro to do this presentation. We have some very powerful tools that help us. So the two things that I'll focus on today, one of them is what I call Kanban board movement tracking. It's one of these practices that in reality is a very, very low effort, but it can yield very, very significant dividends. And then one of the things that we can build upon if we're using Kanban board movement tracking is what I call story tracing, right? How do we bring awareness? How do we start asking questions and using a visualization of sort of the life of what goes on with a work item, such as a story in this case? So Kanban board movement tracking, right? So our value delivery manager, the person that's in this role, takes screenshots of the teams that they're working with or observing their Kanban boards on a daily basis, right? So again, now I'll be doing another episode that focuses on visualization of work, and in that one I am going to talk about Kanban boards, some of the setup, some of the columns in the Kanban boards that we'll see today, and some of the explicit agreements about how things move from one state to another, one column to another. So this is based on having a Kanban board or Kanban boards that we can start capturing moments in time to be able to spot what's going on, to be able to spot, do we have a story or maybe particular types of stories that is taking a lot longer than we anticipated, right? Do we have some waiting going on? Do we have some delays? Can we see how often the work is maybe moving forward or moving backwards, and really what's going on? So I'll show you a couple of examples, right? And this is something that when I work with people that we're sort of upskilling into this value delivery manager role, as well as product owners and team level coaches and more experienced agile coaches and other people in an organization. Sometimes there's a little pushback. It's like, oh my God, it's going to take, that's my whole day. You want me to be taking like a screenshot or these moments in time of a team's Kanban board? Look, once you have this set up, and it requires a little discipline, just whether you're attending a team's daily coordination meeting, daily stand-up meeting, or you're just coming and doing this on a very regular basis. Every morning you come in and you go and you take some snapshots of the boards. What this does is it provides a tremendous amount of information that's really hard to see over a span of time, right? So if I have every day and I can see, well, that story hasn't moved in, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. What's going on with it? Is anybody attending to it? Right, so just some examples, right? There's another teams, another set of Kanban boards, right? Where we're just every day, right, taking a screenshot. You get a couple of days where, right, something was missed. And here's one that's even got more. And again, you can start to see now we've got some movement. There's some tracing, some additional information we're gathering and capturing. Now, you could do this if, I don't know, this was 20 years ago, right? With a physical board, we could take a picture, we could print the picture out, have a whole bunch of these pictures, that we're looking at. But by using a virtual canvas, again, Miro, Mural, Power Noodle, Stormboard, there's lots of these types of tools these days. You really can start to see what's going on, what's moving, what's not moving. And the question I like to ask is, it is a very small amount of time, but who's doing this? Like if you ask the team, and they might know, yeah, we've got some work, we've got some things that just, are kind of stalled a little bit, or yes, we have a growing amount of carryover work. Again, that's one of the examples I'm going to show in the practice of story tracing. Right? You can get a lot of information out of tools like Jira, right? One of the more common agile tools that teams are using amongst all of Jira's competitors. But without doing something where you've got a picture and you're able to actually see what's going on, it's a lot more challenging. So situation we've got where we've got somebody, we've got a value delivery manager, and they have been taking snapshots, and they're seeing that some stories are taking a long period of time. These are stories that have been carried over from one iteration, one sprint to the next, right? So I'm going to base this on just using a time-boxed approach, whether we're using Scrum and we're using sprints, or we're using Discipline Agile and we're using iterations, right? So a time-boxed approach. And so now this next practice of story tracing, right? We've identified an outlier. We've done it, or hopefully an outlier. Hopefully this isn't happening to all of our work. But how can we now visualize that work in a way that we can raise awareness? We can ask questions of the team members. We can try to determine some of the ways that maybe we need to escalate this to be able to start figuring out how to remove some of the waiting time that's going on. Okay, so this team that this is based off of, of an actual team that I worked with. And so you're saying this is the Kanban board. Now I'll go through a little bit on the states, these columns, and as we kind of get into the series of what's going to unfold over 2 iterations, roughly, two 2-week time periods. Work is going to move from the to-do. We come out of our iteration planning event, again very similar to sprint planning. The team is worked with their product owner. We have a backlog with all of the work items on it, all of our user and technical stories in my example here. And those stories, right, coming out of that planning event, we have a high level of confidence we're going to get those done within our time box. So within our 2-week time period and the 2 iterations that I'm going to cover, there were no holidays. So we have 10 days, 10 working days, right, 2 weeks in each one of these iterations. So it looks pretty good, right? We've got what looks to be a reasonable number of stories for this particular team. And if I were to just open one of these stories up, now my version of Miro, I do have integrated, or I've established the integration between Jira. So yeah, it looks pretty good. As a customer, I want to search for a product so I can purchase it, right? That's our user story. I see that there's acceptance criteria. I see that we've got tasks that have been identified, and we've got the team members that we're going to be doing that work. So everything looks pretty good at this point. So I'm going to move on in time a little bit. And this is kind of like starting point. It's like the 0 point, right? We're coming out of our planning event, and what we would want to see from what I would consider an ideal flow is a story, right? One of our work items gets pulled out of our to-do column. And the team members that are ready to start doing the tasks required for this story to be completed, what we'd see is, right, it gets pulled into in development, right? So we'd have, some test-driven developments. We'd have some test things that are being done. Then we have some code being written. We'd have maybe the team members that have more of the test analysts, the test engineers types of skill set, creating test cases, test scripts, making sure there's test data. And that work gets done, it moves into waiting for QA, gets pulled in QA, and we have somebody that's going to then again do that validation, do that testing. Everything's great, goes into waiting for acceptance, right? We're going to let our product owner know that we have a story that is ready to be validated by them or, again, a delegate. We go from in acceptance, and then it's done, right? Meets the definition of done. Fantastic. Again, this is the ideal flow. This doesn't happen with all stories, right? This doesn't happen with all of the work that we're doing. So let's see what happens, and by using our Kanban board, right, tracking, and how we then are going to be able to use that information to do a story trace, right? So I have a story that's been pulled into the workflow, right? And I have a red triangle here with an exclamation point on it. I want to bring some awareness so we can just kind of follow along. So here's, end of day 1, we've got 3 stories that have been pulled into in development. And based on this team, that's great, right? I mean, we've got people that are actively completing tasks or working on tasks to get them completed, to be able to get these requirements implemented and get them validated. All right, so day 2. All right, so we have, something's been moved into waiting for QA. Another story has been pulled into development. No movement on the story that I'm tracing, right? I'm taking a look at this one that, again, I know just from, jumping forward into the future, this story has got a little bit of an issue with it. So now we're gonna see that this moves back, right? And this column is not typical on Kanban boards I work with teams, needs clarification. This one is a good example of what happens when you do have some challenges with the person in the product owner role. If they don't have available capacity, we've got somebody that, they're kind of doing their day job, they're doing their titled position, but they're also have been moved into the role of a product owner. And in this case, we were in a situation where the product owner, for a number of reasons, was not respecting the team's definition of ready. And so we oftentimes had additional clarification, which obviously now we're waiting, right? So we have some development work that was going on, both, again, writing of code and creating of test assets. And now it's gone back, right? So it's been handed back. And it's still there on day 4. And now we get into day 5. Our product owner was finally able to provide some additional clarification. a little more content, both in the acceptance criteria and some of the supporting information that was needed. And now it's moved into the next column, right? One of our waiting states, right? Because we've got work in progress, right? You can see on average, we have 3 or 4 stories, depending on the size and complexity of the story that this team is working on. So we're not going to drop everything and say, oh, well, we have a story that now has been clarified and we're going to context switch and we're going to stop what we're doing. So we want to be tracking how long now this story is now waiting, right? It's day 6 and it's waiting. Day 7, it was now able to be brought in development, right? So now we've moved forward. We're now continuing on where we started in day 1 and day 2 before it's handed back. I'm going to move on to day 8. Right now it's waiting for QA. Day 9, it's in QA. It's looking like we're getting pretty close to the end of our time box, right? We're in day 9 of 10. And in the final day, we see it is waiting for development. It was handed back. A bug was found, right? Or bugs were found, right? So we've got some quality issues that have to be fixed that were based on our testing in QA. So we definitely are seeing that this is, a story that's moved back and forth. And if I had other icons or, little identifiers like the red triangle, this is not the only story that this is happening to. It just happens to be the one I'm using as the example that we're tracing. All right. So we get into our second iteration. So the team goes through, again, iteration planning again. They are going to refresh their to-do column. We have some work, the stories that were already on the Kanban board. Product owner and team agreed those are definitely still things of value. We still need to continue on with that work, but we've, again, brought additional work in for this next time box, this next 2-week period. So moving on, so the story is now in development. It goes back into QA. Goes into waiting for acceptance. Great. So the team members, right, did the whatever appropriate level of testing was done for this particular story, and we're waiting for acceptance by the product owner. Waiting for acceptance. Right, so waiting. Day 5 goes back into in development. So what happened in between this is that the product owner identified a bug. It went into waiting for development for a couple of hours in this case, and it was able to be pulled into in development for those bugs to be addressed. Waiting for QA, in QA. Day 8 of 10, waiting for acceptance. And on day 9, we see it was not only validated by the product owner, but the team agreed that it met their definition of done, which is the product's definition of done. And it's in the done column, right? So great. Move on to the last day. And see more work, more stories are done, still have some work that's in progress. We have some carryover work. But the thing is, without taking snapshots, without doing some or a technique or a practice that's kind of similar, it's really hard to see this. And then what I also ask is, who's attending to this? Who's looking for our work that's being delayed and then trying to determine why is it delayed, right? Again, on this team, we had a product owner that, would have been great if they would have been able to have the time to do this. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough time to even do the what most people would consider the primary role, primary responsibilities or accountabilities in that role, right? So again, we're using the value delivery manager role for somebody that is looking at this team, looking across other teams, and seeing what is going on. So is there a problem here? Yeah, this story took 19 days to complete, right? And it was a pretty good sized story on the Fibonacci sequence. It was an 8, so it wasn't super small, but it wasn't also huge, wasn't huge, wasn't one of the biggest stories or the biggest that the team typically can kind of take on and get done within a 2-week time box. Yeah, 19 days. And this was not the only story that this was going on. So what are some of the questions that a value delivery manager amongst team members, and again, the team level coach or, Scrum Master, team lead, our product owner, right? All these different roles, right? Stakeholders, right? Were there impediments that were blocking this? I don't know. That's something we'd want to know. Was it waiting, or was it in a actively being worked on state, but there was an impediment, something that blocked it? Or do we have a challenge where we're lacking team members with skills? So they're spread pretty thin. And so there's more time that work is spent waiting, or worse, we have more work in a a column where we're actively doing tasks, but we have a lot of work in there, a lot of work in progress, right? So it's too much work in progress. Is a product owner or a delegate responsive? Do we need somebody from like a shared services area? And they just didn't show up, or they didn't provide the amount of time that was needed. So again, we're waiting, right? Now, is there a dependency on this story, right? Have we now affected other work items that maybe are in our to-do column? Have we affected other work items, other work that other teams are doing, right? Have we, again, introduced a delay now to get feedback, not on this story, but maybe this was the last story to kind of complete an end-to-end feature, and now we can't get feedback on the whole feature and maybe some of the alternative behavior because this story was stalled for so long, right? So another question, who's monitoring this, right, to improve this situation? Yes, it should be the Agile coach or the Scrum Master, but oftentimes they're just struggling to get some of the basic fundamental Scrum practices, or again, if we're using DA, right, we're some similar yet additional practices. And how often is this occurring? So how do we raise awareness of this? This is where we get now into the visualization of the story trace. Now, this isn't something we'd be doing for 10 stories, 100 stories, 1,000 stories. This is where we're trying to bring awareness of the situation we're in. So one way is to use our Kanban board and just map this out. Now, I did this, and this took me about 15 minutes. So yeah, 15 minutes is not a trivial amount of time, but it's also not something it took me all day to do, right? It's just, again, I've got my snapshots. I'm able to do this rather quickly. It's like I can just look at the pictures of what that I took every day, and okay, it went forward, it went backwards, it went through all these different things. This is pretty compelling. Now, what's even better is when you start putting time associated with this, right? And again, using a tool like Jira, great. We can get this information out of the tools that we're using. And now I can visualize it by putting, it took 1.5 days when it got into development for tasks to get done before we realized it's got to go back, right? And then 1 day in waiting queue, and 2 days in waiting for QA, and then it goes backwards and it's 2 days in waiting for development, and so forth, right? There's a lot of waiting going on here. Right, so we do have something that's going backwards and forwards, and that's definitely something we want to know, right? But we also want to know how long the work is waiting. Now, could put this in a calendar. Sometimes if we're trying to raise awareness and talk with leadership to say, look, we've got some challenges, right? We've asked some of those questions. We have some ideas of how we might want to address reducing these delays. And yeah, again, visualize it, put it on top of a calendar. Can be quite compelling. And the last way that I'll show is something that looks like this, right? How much touch time versus how much waiting time, right? I took the times, dropped them in Excel, generated a little bar graph. Again, this isn't anything that's really challenging. But again, without having the Kanban board screenshots and without being able to trace some of these stories that are representative of what's going on, typically nobody's attending to this. So could we, from what most leadership often feels, that by adopting an agile or lean way of working, we're going to be much more efficient. Again, we're going to be able to deliver things quicker. We're going to be able to speed time to market. We're going to have all these other benefits as well. But if we're increasing even by 20% the team's touch time, right, the people doing those tasks, it's only going to get us so far. However, if we have something like this and we're able to really reduce or eliminate a lot of this waiting time, there could be multiple things that are causing, waiting, right? In the case that I've used here, it could be we have our absentee product owner. We've got a skills that's in short supply, like, again, some of our team members with testing skills. And again, we've got some people that have a unique skill set that's from shared services. And again, so there could be multiple things that are affecting all of this all of this waiting. But again, we need somebody that's looking at this. We need somebody who's able to ask questions and then start working on resolving it. That is how we're going to be able to increase the flow of value that we're capable of delivering. So these are just two of the practices with some techniques that we teach and we coach. on our value delivery management courses and again, the coaching that we do. Let me go ahead and I'll show one more thing. If you would like additional information on where to learn more, I'll show you. Let me get my window here up and I'll share this. Let me just actually drag this over here. So I'll put this link, right? This is a link that Value Stream Management for Project Managers, our Success Mentors University learning portal. We have a number of upcoming workshops, and some of the things that we look at is, again, our time to market is too long, work is not visualized, the time for feedback is really long, and so forth. And so here's some of the lessons, right? Value delivery mindset, overview of agile ways of working, the value stream, business value, right? All of the things that you're seeing here are things that we are able to see pretty significant improvements, right, by somebody moving into this value delivery manager role, or just other team members, whether you're a project professional, you're a project manager, program manager, or you're a stakeholder, or right, all the other types of roles. These are just some of the things that we see great success with, and there's some of the options that we want to be able to again, teach you on. Okay, so I'll take a quick look. Let's see if we've got any questions today. Will there be a replay? Yes. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Yeah, there will. This live stream is going to be available on LinkedIn. So you can just use the link and it'll be always available, right? You can always replay it here. We also live stream this in parallel on YouTube. So we do have this on our YouTube channel. Amongst all the other value delivery management and value stream management live streams and videos that we do. I'll thank you all for joining today. If there are any additional questions or feedback, or you'd like to see some additional samples, post in LinkedIn. I'm happy to provide some additional context, or if you've got a particular situation that you're in and you want to just put that out there, and I'm happy to provide some context as far as what you might be able to do. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in the next episode of All Things Value Delivery Management.